I cannot describe to you how I'm feeling right now. What I am experienced is so detached from normal, I'm almost convinced I've finally gone sane. Almost. My wife, Beau, died during childbirth. She was gorgeous, funny, intelligent, stubborn. A woman whose laugh was so loud that eating at a restaurant was a challenge, and whose stare was so intense it made my hands shake. But I lost her. As she gave birth to our daughter, Sam. Of course, I could have always resented Sam for taking away what was once mine in a way nothing else can be, for taking what was so truly and utterly pure, but I didn't. I knew Beau wouldn't have had any resentment. She wouldn't have wanted our only daughter to have a life ruined by hate. But this isn't about grief. This isn't about the physical sucker punch of losing forever someone you once loved. This is about something far, far more sinister. My daughter was always lively, always running and screaming, leaping up and down, climbing the frame, causing havoc in her nursery class. So for her 6th birthday, a trip with her friends to the movies had left her so pent up with energy, I could barely keep up with her as she was dipping and dodging between people on the pavement. Occasionally she turned back through the sea of people and shout, "Daddy, come on!" in a tone that was almost pure. I couldn't help but love her. I tried chasing her, I really did. She was too busy looking at me when she dashed down the road and the bus didn't have time to stop. A sickening crunch and the world fell silent. I cradled her broken form in my arms, too weak to numb, too hurt to move. All I could feel was the warm blood gently seep into my clothes. In the state of shock I was in, I could just think about how I was going to wash my jeans. It sounds horrid, I know. But a loss like that tears everything away from you and leaves you only with a bare thought process that makes us human. The next week was a blur. I cannot place a single memory to time, in between friends and family extending their condolences and the howls of sobs of mine that would break out at any moment. A door slamming, the gentle hum of the fridge, or voices laughing on the radio. I attended her funeral dressed in all black. By dress, I don't mean merely clothes. My very essence was dark. I couldn't feel or think, and that day continued as I went through my emotions like a dying man treading water. Everyone was telling me about how Sam, and how perfect she was. What an angel she was, as if I didn't already know. As if I didn't realize what a gift my own daughter was. The man stood out from the rest. As he walked up to me and handed me his large leather book, I assumed at the time he was a parent of one of Sam's friends, handing me a collection of their photos together. Or maybe I was too numb to even process his cold hands, and how he never mentioned my daughter once. For a month, I was lost. I drank. I stayed in our now empty apartment alone, watching old box sets. Too numb now to even cry. It was only when my sister arrived, when she would hold my hand and talk to me, that I began to come out of my shell. She'd sit and listen to the most insane things I said, and gently coax me out of my depression. Not completely, but enough for me to begin to live what was almost a real life again. That was when I opened the book. I decided to remember Sam for all the joy she gave me, and I was prepared to reflect on her life without feeling miserable this time. I opened the first page. It was essentially a binder full of Polaroid photos of my daughter growing up. I furrowed my brow. They were taken from a distance, blurred slightly, and I was even in a few of them. I began to feel sick, but hoped that following the photos would provide some explanation. I came up with every excuse on how the man obtained these photos, desperate to view the moment of my child's life without a sense of trepidation. The photos grew closer and closer to my daughter's birthday. I could see the day I gave her the teeny bike after she turned 5, and the skid knees that ensued. The book had so many more pages that I assumed the rest were empty. There was a photo of her just before the movies on her 6th birthday. I could recognize the pink raincoat she insisted on wearing, and my hands on her shoulders. Thankfully, there was no photo of the crash. Instead, her life continued inside the book. Her 7th birthday had a photo of me and her in the garden, covered in paint, with a huge canvas on the floor, and had an extremely messy painting. Her 7th birthday. The reality of what I was seeing hit me, then I slammed the book shut. I sat there, at the kitchen table, staring at the leather. This must be some sadistic Photoshop, I hoped. Someone had taken the time to pull a horrid prank on me. I say I hoped, because essentially, I couldn't believe the other explanation, if there even was one. Gritting my teeth, I decided I had nothing else to lose, and I kept reading. I can't explain the emotions I felt whilst reading accurately, listening to the sound of page turning. I can try, but nothing can prepare you for something like this. Her life continued, showing her losing her baby teeth, her first day of senior school. My turning the pages became more frenzied, and I began to notice something. The photographer was getting closer to her. As she grew older, not in every photo, but a general trend. The photographer was getting closer and closer, more daring, perhaps. She was beautiful, stunning. As a teenager, she looked just like her mother, all curls and smiles. I grew older too, but the photos began to include me less and less. Her 16th birthday was strange. A group of her friends sitting outside drinking from little plastic cups at a picnic, but there was someone in the background, near the bushes of the park where this was taken. A dark figure stood. You wouldn't have noticed him if not for the small shadow it cast on the grass. I leant back for a moment and exhaled. This was weird. I'd been so caught up in watching my little girl grow up, I hadn't thought about how it would end. Moments like this are so utterly surreal that sometimes you remove yourself from them. I almost felt like I was watching myself read these, like it was a dream or a program on television. But I continued. The dark figure became more and more present in each photograph. I could almost make out his features. His presence was towering. As I turned the page, I expected to see him disappear. But instead, as the photographs grew closer to her 18th, each birthday was marked by a caption underneath with a Polaroid saying, "Another year." She was no longer somewhere I recognized. Instead, the photos of her were in a dimly lit house, her face contorted by fear, striking all sorts of weird poses. Sometimes she would be dressed like an ancient queen, or she would be dressed like a maid scrubbing the floor. The figure was even closer now. His leg or arm would appear in each and every one, no matter how she was dressed. In every photo, her face had this desperate, pained expression. It killed me. There were bruises on her face. She looked thin, ill even. I couldn't do it. This was sick. Properly sick. My girl. But I soldiered on. The last photo I looked at, before I slammed the book shut and swore to never, ever look at it again, was her 18th. The caption underneath read, "At last," in slobby writing. She was looking straight at the camera, crying. She was on her knees, dressed in a black evening dress, with an apple in her mouth, and her hands bound behind her back. Her makeup was ruined by her tears. It was as if she was pleading, begging me to help, but I couldn't. I closed the book and left the room. My whole body convulsed with sobs. I couldn't call the police, of course. She was dead. The thing that keeps me up at night isn't the content of what I saw. It's that there were so many pages left.